Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for September 6th, 2022. The question I'm going to take up today is, are we approaching the end times for the British Empire? By now, Boris Johnson has handed in his resignation to Queen Elizabeth, and Liz Truss has fulfilled her ambition to take over as Prime Minister. This is a moment of profound crisis, which I think is underestimated by most people, how dangerous the situation is. So amidst the usual pomp and ceremony, keep in mind 2 points. First, neither Johnson nor Truss are more than just puppets of the monarchy and the City of London. And secondly, this is a time of unprecedented crisis for the British Empire. Now, Boris Johnson oversaw Brexit, and that's the main theme of much of the story around his leaving as Prime Minister. But keep in mind also that the City of London was both for and against Brexit. They had a hedge. They had worked out the ability to continue to serve as the ultimate benefactor in the derivatives trade, even after they left the European Union. Now, Johnson, his other major accomplishment, so to speak, is that he was a force in pushing NATO into the war to destroy Russia. Maybe he'll be knighted as Sir Bojo of Kiev for his work, but he's also been involved in promoting the idea of global Britain, that the British military should be used as a force internationally, including in Asia, including in Africa, including in South America, to oversee the Great Reset and the Green New Deal. Now, this is what's behind the economic collapse in Great Britain, as well as all of Europe. It was in the inflation and the energy crisis was not caused by Putin, it was not caused by COVID, but by free market reforms and globalization, going back to the time of Margaret Thatcher. Now, Thatcher is known for the Big Bang policy, which occurred in 1986 with total deregulation and privatization of financial markets. It was a new phase shift into the floating exchange rate casino economy. And at the time, Lyndon LaRouche pointed out that this will lead to the bankruptcy of any country that adopts this method, that it will be inflationary, and lead to a collapse. And he was absolutely right. This was then followed up by Tony Blair and the Third Way. The key thing for the Third Way is it became a model for Democrats to join the Republicans in the United States as neoliberals under the influence of Clinton and Al Gore. The other aspect of Blair was the rejection of the principle of Westphalia, and which asserts the right of sovereignty of all nations, and a replacement of that with this doctrine of responsibility to protect, which is an excuse for regime change, wars, and coups. This was Blair's policy. It was imposed through Bush and Cheney, and it was continued by Obama and continued today by the Biden administration. Now, it was also under Johnson that the Green New Deal was pushed through. And Johnson was there at the Glasgow summit to promote it. This was a policy of the City of London bankers, presided over by Prince Charles himself, representing the monarchy, because Prince Philip was pretty much out of it by then, and the Bank of England governor, Mark Carney, who went from the Bank of England to be the UN guru of climate change. Now, the other aspect of the British system is the use of media control through the BBC, but overall through what's known as today hybrid warfare, which is a fancy term for brainwashing. There's a long history of this in Great Britain. Many people refer to Orwell as one who chronicled it. But today you have the use of behavioral insight teams, which are supposed to be engaged in selling policies to nudge people to accept things which go against their interests, but are supposedly in the interests of everyone else. Now, there's a problem with this that Liz Truss is going to run up against very quickly. Can you convince people who are freezing in the dark that they must suffer to defend the so-called freedom of the Ukrainian people and that it's Putin to blame for their suffering? Can you convince hungry children and starving pensioners that they're starving for a greater good? Now, this is not just a British problem. We saw this highlighted by some comments in the last days of other European leaders. Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, who said no matter what the voters think, the Germans will continue to fund the war against Russia and Ukraine. No matter what the voters think, what she said, my German voters think. So it doesn't matter what the population wants, you're going to do the policy that you want. Macron said something similar. The age of abundance is over. The Belgian prime minister spoke of 5 to 10 years of terrible winters. And Jerome Powell, in selling the high interest rate policy supposedly as part of anti-inflation, said that there will be pain and it may have to get worse. So this is important for people to think through. This is not Putin who's responsible. No matter what you think of Putin, it's the corrupt leaders of all parties governing in the transatlantic region in the West. They're pushing utopian agendas, including Green New Deal, Great Reset, for the sake of prolonging the life of bankrupt and immoral institutions. This could be reversed very quickly. You could end the war through negotiations. You could have an agreement for no further NATO expansion. You could have an agreement for security guarantees for Russia, which Putin asked for Ukraine, and for every other nation. And you could put the financial system through bankruptcy reorganization. This would take power away from the City of London and their Wall Street allies and the central banks that are run by these private financial institutions, such as the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the Bank of England. And that's what we'll be discussing at our September 10th and 11th Schiller Institute conference, how to take this moment of crisis and turn it against those who caused the crisis instead of going deeper down the rabbit hole by giving them their wishes based on the manipulation of popular opinion. Now, I would say something to our friends in the United Kingdom and the other British colonies, including Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Look to the poet Percy Shelley for inspiration. Now, I was just rereading his 1812 Declaration of Rights, which is very significant because it's a reflection of a European view of the U.S. Constitution and the importance of the American Revolution. And he opens it by stating, quote, "Government has no rights. It is a delegation from several individuals for securing their own," meaning their own rights. He goes on to say, "It is therefore just only so far as it exists by their consent, useful only so far as it operates to their well-being," unquote. In other words, the Declaration of Rights of Shelley is a call for a republic, to get rid of the monarchy, to get rid of the titled nobility, and to adopt the kind of policies that are reflected in the U.S. Constitution. Now, he goes further than this in his defense of poetry, which is a marvelous essay which concludes with his statement that moments of crises such as this offer an opportunity for people to advance their critical thinking and to break out of containment. We've had several opportunities for this to occur in recent years. The most important was the great moment of 1989 with the collapse of communism. And instead of taking advantage of the opportunity to revive the American system through aiding the development of the former Soviet economies, the bankers of London and Wall Street took it as an advantage, as an opportunity to loot Russia and Eastern Europe. The Russians have recovered from that. The Ukrainians have not. In fact, the Ukrainians have gone deeper down into the policy of shock therapy. And this was something that predated the Russian special military operation. We can't miss this opportunity. That's why it's important that people join us for this conference to engage in a full deliberative discussion of what the options are and what can be done. And if we do that, we may be seeing the final act of the British Empire presided over by what some people call the Tin Lady, Liz Truss. So thanks for joining me. Tomorrow we have a press conference we'll have at the Schiller Institute. You'll find a link. And then this weekend's conference will be linked at the bottom of the description page.